Subscribe now. It's completely free and it won't cost you anything. The Galactic Council Hall had never been this silent. Ambassadors from 100 different species sat in stunned disbelief, their many-colored faces frozen in shock. Humans, those unpredictable, stubborn Deathworlders, had done the unthinkable. They had walked away. Not stormed out. Not thrown accusations. Not even given an ultimatum. They had simply stood up and left. Ambassador Rethal of the Zelvari blinked his 4 eyes rapidly, trying to process what had just happened. One moment, the humans were arguing their case, their voices filled with passion and fire. The next, they were gone, their empty seats at the central negotiating table a void that no one knew how to fill. "This is impossible," muttered High Speaker Vorton of the Galactic Council, his mandibles clicking anxiously. They wouldn't just leave. They know what's at stake. But they had. And that was what terrified everyone the most. Across the room, Supreme Chancellor Drek of the Erdos Dominion slammed a fist against the polished table. "They're bluffing," he snarled. "They wouldn't abandon the talks. Not after everything." Ambassador Tessa Morgan, the sole human representative remaining in the hall, slowly rose from her chair. Her expression was unreadable, her posture relaxed, yet firm. "No, Chancellor," she said calmly. "We're done." The words hit harder than any shouted threat. A ripple of nervous energy passed through the chamber as whispers broke out between the delegates. "Done. The humans couldn't be done." "You can't just leave," barked the envoy from the Vereen Syndicate, his feathery crest puffing in alarm. "Do you even comprehend what this means?" Morgan tilted her head slightly as if considering the question. Then she nodded. "Yes, we do. And that's why we're leaving." With that, she turned and strode toward the massive doors of the council hall, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. The great doors hissed open, revealing the towering human marines stationed outside, their expressions impassive, their weapons holstered but present. Before stepping through, Morgan looked back one last time. "You had your chance," she said. "You wasted it." Then she was gone. And the Galactic Council fell into chaos. The panic begins. The moment the doors sealed shut, the chamber erupted. Dozens of voices shouted over one another, panic spreading like wildfire. Ambassadors from the galactic core systems turned to their aides, demanding explanations. Others rushed to their communication devices, scrambling to contact their homeworlds. "This can't be happening," one of the Ilothian representatives screeched, her tendrils writhing in distress. "They control too much. If they pull out of the alliance, the economy will collapse," another alien finished grimly. "They know that. And they're using it. What do we do?" Vorton demanded, his mandibles clicking faster now. "Someone get their military attaché. Someone stop them." But no one moved. No one knew how to stop humanity when it had already made up its mind. Chancellor Drek's red-scaled fists were clenched so tightly that the edges of his claws dug into his palms. "Fools," he hissed. "They have planned this. This is not an impulsive decision. They knew exactly what they were doing." "Of course they did," Ambassador Rethal muttered. "They're Deathworlders. They don't play games. If they've left, it's already too late." The realization settled over the chamber like a suffocating weight. The humans were gone. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council understood true fear. The shockwaves across the stars. The human withdrawal from the Galactic Council sent ripples across the known universe within hours. The Terran Trade Authority, responsible for the bulk of interstellar commerce routes, sent out a formal message. All trade contracts were now under review. The sole military command, whose fleets had been the backbone of the Council's defense forces, began recalling their warships from joint patrols. And perhaps most ominously, the Terran Diplomatic Corps, responsible for keeping humanity engaged in galactic politics, went completely silent. Not a single response. Not a single word. Planets that had relied on human infrastructure scrambled to find alternatives. Allied species who had depended on human protection suddenly found themselves vulnerable. "They're forcing us to fall apart," murmured an elder from the Kelzor delegation. Without firing a single shot, Ambassador Rethal could only nod. That's how humans fight their wars. Not with weapons. With decisions. A desperate plea. By the time the Galactic Council drafted an emergency resolution, the damage had already begun. Civil unrest broke out on multiple worlds, with citizens demanding answers their governments did not have. Desperate, they sent a final transmission. A formal request, signed by every major faction, begging humanity to return. It was met with silence. Until hours later, a single encrypted message arrived. One sentence. We warned you. The encrypted message reverberated through the halls of the Galactic Council like a death knell. We warned you. The simplicity of it was more terrifying than any declaration of war. It meant the humans weren't just upset, they were finished. There would be no negotiations, no last-minute compromises. The most unpredictable species in the known galaxy had just decided to let the universe fend for itself. And the universe was not prepared. The economic collapse. Within days, the cracks in the galactic economy became impossible to ignore. Humanity had not only been a military powerhouse but a crucial component of trade, logistics, and technology. Hyperlanes previously maintained by Terran engineers began to degrade, causing massive transport disruptions. Civilizations that had relied on Earth-built fusion reactors suddenly found their energy grids flickering. Even mundane commodities, food shipments, medical supplies, construction materials, began disappearing from trade hubs. The Zelvari Syndicate, once one of the largest importers of human-made pharmaceuticals, faced immediate shortages. Desperate to maintain order, they attempted to source replacements from the Zelthari, but human medicines had been years ahead of any competitor. Sickness spread rapidly across colonies that had once depended on Terran vaccines. Even the Kelzor Empire, a species that had openly opposed humanity's influence in the past, found itself paralyzed. Their industrial expansion projects had been reliant on human AI systems for coordination. Without them, their infrastructure ground to a near halt. "We never realized how much we needed them," a Kelzor official admitted in a leaked transmission. "We thought their presence was a convenience, was a foundation. And now it's crumbling?" The Galactic Trade Index, once a stable measure of economic power, plummeted overnight. Currencies tied to Terran investments collapsed, causing financial panic across multiple systems. Factions that had once scoffed at humanity's economic influence now found themselves in freefall. Entire planetary governments declared states of emergency as food shortages and fuel rationing became necessary. Desperation turned into riots, and riots turned into rebellion. The military void. For centuries, humanity had been the bulwark of the Galactic Council's defense initiatives. Their fleets had been the first to respond to pirate incursions, their marines the first boots on the ground whenever chaos erupted. Now those fleets were gone, recalled to Sol-controlled space. The Council's borders, once patrolled by Earth's warships, were left exposed. Pirate factions, once held at bay by fear of human retaliation, became bolder. The Vrax Corsairs, long a thorn in the Council's side, launched simultaneous raids across multiple outer colonies. Without human warships intercepting their movements, Council security forces struggled to contain the attacks. The Tarkis Dominion, a militaristic empire that had been kept in check by human-led coalitions, saw its opportunity. Within a week of the human withdrawal, Tarkis fleets began encroaching on neutral space, claiming systems that had once been under the Council's protection. Worse still, the Zelthari Collective, a species long viewed as too weak to challenge the Council, began expanding aggressively. Their diplomats had always deferred to humanity's presence, but with no Terran forces in play, the Zelthari saw a power vacuum. They moved fast, annexing 5 border colonies before the Council could even react. Panic spread among the Council's weaker factions. They had assumed that, if nothing else, humanity would always be there, to shield them from outside threats, to reinforce their fleets, to remind the galaxy that some lines should not be crossed. Now those lines no longer existed. A desperate gamble. In a last-ditch effort to prevent total collapse, the Council called for an emergency summit. Every major faction sent their most experienced diplomats, desperate to find a way to bring humanity back to the table. "We must renegotiate," High Speaker Vorton declared. "We must offer them whatever they want." "And what if they want nothing?" Ambassador Redhal countered darkly. "What if they want us to fail?" Silence. The thought had been lingering in the minds of every delegate. The humans had not issued demands. They had not made threats. They had simply left. And in doing so they had left the galaxy to burn. The summit quickly devolved into chaos. Old rivalries reignited as factions accused one another of being responsible for humanity's departure. The Tarkis delegation openly mocked the Council's desperation, while the Kelzor argued that Earth's sudden retreat was an act of economic sabotage. "They planned this," Supreme Chancellor Drek of the Erdos Dominion bellowed. "They are watching us collapse and enjoying it?" "Nonsense," Redhal shot back. "Humans warned us. They gave us decades to fix this, and we ignored them." Despite the Council's desperation, there was no clear path forward. They had underestimated humanity's importance for too long. And now, with the pillars of galactic stability crumbling, they could do nothing but watch. A fractured galaxy. As the emergency summit dragged on, reports of separatist movements began to surface. Entire planetary systems declared independence, no longer trusting the Council's ability to maintain order. Once loyal allies turned to piracy, scavenging what little resources they could to survive. The galaxy was splintering. And deep within Sol-controlled space, humanity watched. They did not send envoys. They did not offer help. They simply waited. Because they knew something the Council had refused to believe. Sometimes the only way to teach a lesson is to let the galaxy learn it the hard way. The galaxy stood on the edge of an abyss. What had started as political chaos was now a full-blown crisis. Star systems once held together by diplomatic treaties were unraveling. Trade routes collapsed. Military alliances fractured. Famine and lawlessness spread like wildfire. And all of it had begun the moment the humans walked away. The Council's last attempt. The emergency summit had stretched into its third consecutive day. The Council chamber, once a place of calculated diplomacy, was now a war zone of raised voices, bitter accusations, and desperate pleas. We cannot let this continue. High Speaker Vorton slammed his fist onto the podium, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Every hour that passes, we lose another system to chaos. Then do something about it, snarled Supreme Chancellor Drek. Where is the envoy to Sol? Have they responded yet? Silence. All eyes turned toward the Council's chief negotiator, a wiry, soft-spoken Niskari named Rilansat. He hesitated before finally speaking. We have sent multiple diplomatic requests. All have been ignored. The Terran government is not responding. The weight of his words crushed the room. The humans weren't just refusing to talk. They were ignoring the Council entirely. Unacceptable, bellowed an Erdos representative. They must be made to listen. If they refuse? What? Red Hal of the Zelvari snapped. You'll threaten them? The last time a species made demands of Earth, their homeworld was turned into a cautionary tale. The room fell into uneasy silence. Everyone knew what Red Hal meant. The Gorlax War. Decades ago, the Gorlax Imperium had underestimated humanity. They had raided Terran colonies, believing the humans would crumble under pressure. Instead, they had witnessed the full force of human retaliation. In 1 month, the Gorlax homeworld was left a burning husk. Their empire ceased to exist. Humanity had not just won that war, they had erased their enemy. Now, that same terrifying force had chosen to walk away. And the galaxy was paying the price. The turning tide. Without human stabilizers, systems across the Council's territory descended into madness. The Vrax corsairs expanded their reach, turning entire trade sectors into lawless battlegrounds. Refugee ships fled their home planets, seeking protection the Council could no longer provide. On the fringes of the galaxy, the Tarki's Dominion launched full-scale invasions, annexing vulnerable colonies. Their war fleets had previously been held in check by human-led coalitions, but now, with no deterrent, they moved with brutal efficiency. Civil unrest exploded on once prosperous core worlds. Planets that had relied on human technology for agriculture and medicine found themselves facing shortages. Riots turned into full-blown revolutions. Entire governments fell overnight. The Kelzor Empire, previously neutral, saw the chaos as an opportunity. Their once muted ambitions ignited into full expansion mode, claiming systems they never would have dared to touch before. The Council, now fragmented and leaderless, had no unified force to stop them. And yet, despite the growing desperation, the humans remained silent. Until, finally, they spoke. A single message broadcast across the galaxy. You built a house of cards. Now watch it fall. The meaning was clear. Humanity had never been the ones who needed the Council. It was the Council that had needed humanity. And now they were proving it. The final choice. As the Council teetered on the brink of collapse, the remaining delegates faced an impossible decision. We have no choice, Rilansat whispered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. If we do not act now, there will be nothing left to save. And what exactly do you propose? Drek growled. We go to them, Vorton said grimly. Not as equals. Not as negotiators. As supplicants. It was a humiliating proposal. To crawl back to Earth to beg for their help, the thought was unbearable to many. But as the Council chamber flickered with breaking news of another fallen world, another shattered alliance, another lost fleet, the bitter truth became undeniable. There was no other option. As the Council prepared its delegation, debates raged. What will we even offer them? An Erdos official demanded. Why would they even listen? They won't, Redhow murmured. Not unless we give them a reason. Desperate proposals were thrown onto the table. Access to council-controlled territories, exclusive trade routes, technological exchanges. Nothing seemed like it would be enough. Because everyone knew the truth, humanity didn't need the council. They had walked away because they could. The journey to Sol. With what little power they had left, the council's highest-ranking officials boarded the diplomatic vessel Varkan's Hope and set course for Sol. The journey was long, filled with anxious silence and fearful speculation. What if the humans refused to meet them? What if they had already moved on, sealing their borders permanently? As the ship entered Terran-controlled space, the tension in the air thickened. Every ambassador aboard knew they were walking into unknown territory. Then, as they reached Sol's outer defense perimeter, the first communication came. Unidentified vessel, this is Terran Defense Command. State your purpose? The moment had come. Rilansat took a deep breath and stepped forward. We come on behalf of the Galactic Council, he said, voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We seek an audience with the leaders of Earth. Pause. A long, suffocating silence. Then a response. You are cleared for approach. Docking Bay 14. A murmur rippled through the delegation. They had expected rejection. They had expected indifference. Instead, they had been given a door. The question now was, what lay on the other side? The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. And for the first time since the humans had walked away, there was hope. Hope, but also fear. Because if humanity had chosen to listen, that meant they had made a decision. And the Council had no idea whether that decision was salvation or judgment. The Galactic Council delegation had expected hostility. They had expected arrogance, a cold reminder that humanity no longer considered itself bound to the laws of the wider galaxy. What they found instead was silence. As their ship docked in Terran space, no warships swarmed them, no security forces stormed the airlocks. The corridors of Sol Defense Station Prime were eerily empty as they were escorted toward a chamber unlike any they had seen before. There was no throne, no towering architecture meant to intimidate. Just a simple, dimly lit meeting room where a single human sat across from them. President Elias Carter of the Terran Union studied them in silence, his expression unreadable. A leader not of desperation but of certainty. The kind of certainty that only came from absolute control. Sit, Carter finally said. The delegation obeyed. The Council's plea. High Speaker Vorton was the first to speak. We have come. Carter raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I know why you're here, he said. What I want to know is, why should we care? The words sent a shiver through the delegation. Chancellor Drek, usually the most outspoken, found himself hesitating. No one had prepared for this. Rilansat cleared his throat. Because without you the galaxy will collapse. It already is, Carter replied, unblinking. And you did nothing to stop it. Now that it's affecting you, you suddenly expect us to fix your mess. Vorton swallowed. Humanity was always a part of the Council. No. Carter's voice was calm but firm. We were never truly a part of it. We were used by it. We were expected to bleed for it, fund it, defend it, but never lead it. Now that we've left, you finally see the cost of your arrogance. The truth was undeniable. The humans had never been equals in the Council. They had been seen as useful, nothing more. Until they weren't. The terms of return. Vorton straightened his posture. We acknowledge our mistakes. We come not as leaders but as those in need. We are willing to negotiate. Negotiate? Carter leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. What could you possibly offer us? The question stunned them. The Council had been prepared to bargain, but the weight of reality crashed down on them. What did they have that humanity needed? Nothing. Drek exhaled sharply. We have territories, resources, trade networks. We have our own, Carter interrupted. We don't need your colonies. We don't need your fleets. And after everything, we certainly don't need you. The silence in the room was deafening. For the first time in history, the Council was truly powerless. They had come expecting to hold some leverage. But there was none. The decision. After a long pause, Carter finally spoke again. Here's what's going to happen. We will not return to the Council. Ever. It failed because of its own incompetence, and we will not rebuild a broken system. Vorton's breath caught. Then, what do we do? Carter stood. You will survive. Or you won't. That's not our problem anymore. Rilansat spoke carefully. You won't help us at all? The president studied them for a moment, then exhaled. We will not help the Council. But we will help those who deserve it. The delegation exchanged uneasy glances. Meaning? Carter's gaze hardened. Your people, not your governments, will have a choice. If they wish to align with us, to become part of something better than the Council, they may. We will take them in, protect them, train them. But we will not save a broken empire. Chancellor Dreck's face darkened. You would steal our worlds from us? No, Carter said, stepping toward the door. Your people will choose to leave. Because, given the option, why would they stay in a dying empire when they could join something greater? The Council had come to restore their power. Instead they had lost it forever. A new galactic order. The delegation left Sol with no agreement, no alliance, and no hope for the Council's return. But across the galaxy something else was happening. Refugees from collapsing worlds turned to the Terran Union, choosing stability over chaos. Independent planets cut ties with the Council, seeking new treaties with Earth. Formerly neutral factions pledged loyalty to humanity, recognizing that the future belonged to them. The Council had ruled the stars for centuries. But now the era of humanity had begun. The final broadcast. 3 weeks after the failed negotiations, the Council received an unexpected message. A single, encrypted transmission sent from Sol to every major power in the galaxy. Carter's voice echoed through the vast network of galactic communications. We are no longer your soldiers. We are no longer your protectors. We are no longer your allies. Pause. Then the final blow. We are your replacement. Across the galaxy, billions of beings processed the meaning of those words. The Terran Union was not just leaving the Council behind. They were building something new. And for the first time, the Galactic Council realized that their greatest fear was not humanity's withdrawal. It was humanity's ascendancy.